Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Seiko Presage Enamel Multi-Hand Automatic SPB045. First off, though, before I go any further, I want to thank my buddies over at Lewis Jewelers in Ann Arbor, Michigan for sending this guy along. They loaned this guy my way for me to take a look at for the channel, and they're great. They're my watch dealer. Generally, they do Omega, Breitling, Tag, Seiko, even more Seiko, obviously, and a bunch more. They've got this guy along with a couple of variants of it available, and if you talk to my buddy DK over there, tell him Nick Shabazz sent you. They can hook you up with some promotional pricing. That is a beautiful thing. So anyways, thanks Lewis Jewelers for giving me a chance to take a look at this guy. Next thing, let's do some size measurement on this real quick. What we can see here is that this actually isn't a huge watch. I mean, it comes in around 40 millimeters overall for the general size here. The lug width is about 20 millimeters, which is good to know. The overall width of the guy isn't completely insane. We're talking 13.1 millimeters. That's up there, and that should... Oh, and then lug-to-lug distance, of course. Lug-to-lug distance here is someplace in the 47 millimeter range, 46, 47. So, absolutely not a very large watch, but definitely a watch that's worth considering there. Next thing, this is going to be a relatively quick review. I mean, it'll still take me forever because, well, you know who I am. But anyways, I've only had this guy in my possession for about 48 hours. And as a result, and I'm going to have to send it back because I need to keep it in factory fresh shape, you know. Worn it around the house, but I haven't worn it, you know, anywhere else. So, do keep that in mind. This is not going to have as much gravitas as a review or something I've worn for months and months and months. But nevertheless, I think I was able to get a pretty good sense for it. So let's talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little watch right here. So on the good side, to start with, actually for dress watches, I tend to be an advocate of quartz watches. I think they work very well, and for the majority of people, it tends to be a really good option. But for me, actually, dress watches are sort of an exception to that. And the reason I say that is because I don't have to wear a dress watch all that often. When I do, I tend to wear this guy. It's a Quartz Omega Seamaster Aquaterra. But the problem with quartz watches is they tend to run down on batteries, especially if it's not a solar model. The nice thing with a mechanical is that even if you don't wear it all that crazy often, all you need to do is just, you know, wind it up a little bit every so often, and that'll keep it, you know, ready to go. So then you take it off the shelf, and even if it stopped running, you just wind it up real quick, and then you're good to go. You never have to worry about replacing batteries, etc. And that's kind of a nice thing. So if you are a person who doesn't wear a dress watch all that often, mechanical might actually be the best approach to do it. So yeah, keep that in mind. Next thing, size-wise, this is a nice little size. I think 40 millimeters is a good sweet spot in that it works well for people like myself with relatively small wrists here. I'll throw this guy on the wrist so you can see that. Although this is definitely going to make this whole thing seem a little bit bigger than it is here. I'll tighten and deploy it and everything off the camera. You can see here that, you know, this works pretty well. I think 40 millimeters is a pretty good size for a lot of folks. Next thing, the movement on this guy is a Seiko 6R20 movement. And there is a piece of plastic film on the back there. Again, keeping this guy factory fresh, so I don't want to take that off. But what you can see in there is that it is a absolutely fine little movement. It is 4 hertz, which makes it a little bit smoother than some of the Seiko watches out there. So it runs a little faster. It has a power reserve indicator right over here, which tells you how much juice basically is left in the spring. It has a date function down below here. It is a dial-based date, so we can see it is the 23rd right now, because that's where this little arrow is pointing to. It has a quick set function on that date, so if I pull the crown out to the second position here, and it is during the morning, so I don't have to worry about this. I can, if I go the right direction, let's see here, come on, there we go. I was going the wrong direction. I can change the date on this guy pretty straightforwardly, and that means that even if you haven't worn it for a little while, you can get the date to where it needs to be. That's a beautiful thing. It is also a hand-winding movement, so you can do this to wind it. You can see, actually, watch, as I'm winding this guy, the power reserve is going up because I'm putting more energy into that mainspring. Right now, I have about 30 hours worth of runtime left on this watch. If I want to keep winding, it'll get up to 40, and then eventually up to 45. And so it allows you to hand wind, but it is also an automatic watch. You can see here that there is the that weight in the background moving there. That will wind the watch naturally on your wrist. So you really shouldn't ever have to be in a situation where it is where you're running low if you're wearing this on a regular basis. And then in terms of accuracy, I put this guy in the time grapher, and we are running between +1 and +10 seconds per day in all of the positions tested. And I'd say it averaged out to around 3 or 4, plus 3 or 4 seconds a day. So accuracy-wise, it's absolutely in a good range. And I bet that on the wrist, it would perform quite well. Next thing, I do like the power reserve on this guy, especially for a dress watch. And I'm making the assumption that you're not wearing a dress watch every day, but some people will. But it's very nice because that way you can keep it wound fairly easily, right? You look down, it's like, oh, I'm about to run out. Okay, I'll wind it back up. And you can also tell very quickly, especially if you're wearing something else over the weekend, you can tell where you're at and keep the watch running a little bit more readily. Is it a big deal? No, absolutely not. Maybe some people would prefer it without, but at least for me, I think it's a cool complication and a nice thing to see on here. Next thing, this is a 10 atmosphere water-resistant watch. I can see if I can highlight that for you. It's around here someplace. There we go, water-resistant, 10 bar. What that basically means is that you don't have to worry about water. Sure, I mean, you could probably drop this into the ocean and kill the watch, but at the same time, wear this in a rainstorm or something like that, the leather might get funky, but the watch itself is going to be fine. And I consider this to be a beautiful thing because, worst case, you replace a strap, but the thing is, replacing a watch is much more costly. And considering how many dress watches out there are done with 5 atmosphere, 3 atmosphere, and no water resist at all, honestly, it's good that they took that step to protect the watch. That's a great thing. Next thing, they've got a lot of variants on this guy. This is the white dial, as you can obviously see here, but they've got a bunch of other colorways. In fact, I was very close to asking Louis Jewelers this. They've got one of the burgundy dial ones that is just freaking gorgeous, because it goes between a red and a black. But the thing is, that's a limited edition, and I wanted to go with something that's a little bit less expensive, just because that would be more broadly available. But they have a lot of really gorgeous variants of this particular watch with the enamel dials in different color. Oh, yeah. So, definitely check those out. That's a possibility. Next thing, this has a very nice crystal on it. Not only is it a sapphire crystal, as it better be at about $1,000, but it is a very, 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 very nicely done one because it is not only relatively reflection-free, it's not got an outside anti-reflective coating, but it's done in such a way that it doesn't reflect super well. But it is also just beautifully fitted. This is a silly thing, but if you take a close look here, it beautifully just sits right above there. I don't know why, but the way that this crystal is fitted with those polished edges reflecting the micro indices there drives me a little crazy in a good way. I think that's a beautiful thing there. It also has a transparent case back, so you can see in there the movement going through. This is not necessarily, it's not like functionally helpful or anything like that, but it definitely does look nice, and it definitely makes the watch, that's one of the joys of a mechanical watch, right, is the mechanism taken along there, and so I think that's always a nice plus. Next thing, the case on this guy is beautifully polished. If we look at this guy and I kind of clean it off here, what we can see here is there are areas of very high polish. You can see it's absolutely beautiful. You can see the camera phone there. I mean, that's a good polish. But they also have areas of it that are beautifully brushed out, like, for instance, this little area right here. They have a nice polish all around the X. This is a nicely done case. Even the crown itself is beautifully polished there. So I'm a big fan of this case overall, and the fact that it is beautifully polished, yeah, that's a big thing. Next thing, the strap on this guy is nice. It is a alligator style strap here. I didn't ask exactly what animal it's coming off of, but nevertheless, it looks very alligatory. And it is actually on a deployant clasp. What I mean by that is that in order to close this guy, you can basically, what you do is you adjust this guy such that the clasp is in the right hole for your particular wrist. So you can slide this up and down and figure out, okay, for me to wear this watch comfortably, the strap needs to be right there. And then at that point, you never need to adjust that again. You just put your wrist through there and then pinch this down, and then you can just slide this in. This not only saves wear and tear on the clasp, but it's also safer. What I mean by that is that if I put this guy on my wrist, I can have this guy, even if this buckle comes undone, absolutely nothing happens. The watch is still on a loop, and it's still around my wrist, as opposed to a more classical, like Tang buckle style strap, where it would be very easy to have the watch fall at some of those stages of the process. A deployant clasp is always a nice thing, and so I appreciate seeing one here. Then finally, on the good side, side, it has this nice enamel dial. I'm going to see if I can show this off here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. It looks on the surface just like a plain white dial here, and well, at some level it is, but the thing is, there's actually more topography here. If we look in here, we can see that this dial has many different layers, many different facets. You can also see the nice blued hands on there too. But nevertheless, this dial actually has a three-dimensionality to it. It has a curvature to it. In fact, it is a very smooth curvature. It is just absolutely a very, very nice little dial here. And you can see all sorts of different gradations there. You can even see that the indices themselves have a little bit of prominence to them. They're printed on there, but they're printed in a way that's a little bit three-dimensional. And because it's an enamel dial, enamel is when you melt a glass, basically, a silicate glass, onto a metal disc. And it is not only a pain to do, which explains some of the pricing, but it gives you a dial that does not fade. The dial can't fade because it's freaking glass on there. It gives you just a little bit of durability, and plus they add in like the micro gradations. This is one of the least expensive enamel dials, full enamel dials that's on the market there, and it just is a nice argument for why enamel dials are absolutely a beautiful thing. So seeing that enamel on there gives it a whole different level of sort of, I don't want to say sophistication because that's a little silly, but it gives it a level of, they've gone an extra mile here that is not present, particularly in dials that are a little bit more flat, like this guy here, where it's like, yeah, it's just a kind of a metal sort of thing. There's not much actual interest there. Whereas this, yeah, that's a thing. So, to me at least, all that is the good, is that it has a beautiful enamel dial. It is a very nice strap with a good case polish, a transparent case back, which is a beautiful thing. It has a nice crystal, many variants available, 10 atmosphere water resistant, 100 meters. The power reserve is a nice touch on here with a nice movement, a nice size, and mechanicals are a very nice case for a dress watch. Up on the great side, to me, this is a classy looking watch. I mean, between the case polishing, which is absolutely a beautiful thing, between the beautiful enamel dial, the blued hands, even the little moon that you see on the back of the second hand here, running around, this absolutely looks beautiful. This is a watch that is classy enough for roughly anything. Anything at all, this watch will be a beautiful, beautiful watch for. I like this very, very much. It takes you, honestly, I think this is dressy enough that it would take you up to the point in the dress watch world where wearing a watch becomes a faux pas. Like a certain point, I'm told, at a party I would never be invited to, there's a point where it's like, oh, you shouldn't even wear a watch. This is so freaking classy. I don't know. It's a culture. But anyways, this is a very classy looking watch, and I cannot picture a situation in which this wouldn't be dressy enough to handle it. So, to me at least, that's what's great here, is this is a seriously classy looking watch. On the bad side, to start with, there is no lume on this guy. As you can see here, it is black on a dial and then blued hands. There won't be lume. For me personally, I tend to prefer lume even on a dressier piece, but that's, my own craziness, so consider that. Next thing, this strap wears backwards. What I mean by that is, here, I'll put this guy on my wrist here, and then what you'll see, hold on, get everything seated in place here. What you see as you put this on the wrist is that here, I'll zoom out a little bit. The strap, the spare part of the strap, although it does have a keeper here, actually is sitting on the bottom side of the wrist towards you, rather than on the other side. And the way that most watches generally work, the extra strap is on the other side there. And so it works properly as a deployant buckle, with you pulling the buckle towards you, and you could probably swap this around if it really bothered you, but that was kind of a little bit strange. And that's the result of this guy having this weird three-dimensional construction where it bends back over itself, and then, either way, it's not a big deal, but it's definitely something I noticed and felt a little bit strange. Next thing on this guy, there is a fair amount of text on this dial. Seiko, sure, that makes sense. Presage, okay. Automatic, yeah, we get it. Japan movement, then there's a bunch of other stuff down there at the bottom. Like, one of the biggest things about this watch is that dial, and I feel like this would just be classier without the Presage automatic. Like, dude, it's an automatic. We see that. You don't have to tell us this. It doesn't make any sense to me. I would much rather have seen this as a bare dial, letting that enamel show through a little bit more. Not a big deal, but it's a deal. And also, by the way, you could absolutely tone down this bar here for the power reserve because it is a little on the distracting side. Next thing, there are some angles from which this guy becomes, especially these smaller indicators, because of the enamel dial's curvature, become a little tricky to read. Not a big deal, something to consider. Next thing, this guy is actually a little bit on the thicker side. Very often, one of the things I like in a good dress watch is it being relatively thin, but this guy, compared to the Aquaterra here, which given is quartz, but this is a relatively thicker watch. Compared to this very dressy little quartz watch from Orient, this is a little thicker. It's not the end of the world. It'll still fit under your shirt cuff, but I'd kind of like to see them shrink that down a little bit generally. Next thing, this has two hands that are blue, actually three hands that are blued. The second hand, the hour hand, and the minute hand have this beautiful blue finishing to it. Looks a little painty sometimes in some lights, but they are beautifully blued, whereas the power reserve hand and the date hand are black. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I really don't necessarily get why they didn't just blue all of the hands, because it just feels like, wait a second, what? Why? So I'd kind of like to see that happen. And the bluing of the hands, though, I will say it's not as prominent because from most angles, the hands actually just look black. You need to sort of be in a situation for the light to catch that blueness in order for them to feel blue. Otherwise, they do just look black. But still, why not just make them all blued, guys? I mean, that seems kind of like an inconsistency thing, right? Just have all the hands be the same color. It doesn't... Anyways. And then finally, on the bad side, the price on this guy is relatively high. I mean, if you look at this relative to other enamel dials, this is actually a bargain. This is sort of on the lower of the lowest end that you can get a good enamel dial, and I would argue this is a good enamel dial. But the thing is, this is still an expensive watch. We're looking at a retail price of $1,100 at retail. Thing is, you shouldn't pay retail, of course. You should talk to your local Seiko AD, and if you've built a relationship, they should be able to help you out. Or failing that, talk to my guys. Talk to Lewis Jewelers, tell DK Nick sent you. They will help you out as well. But nevertheless, you shouldn't pay retail, but the retail price on this is a little bit high. And although certainly in the enamel world it's relatively inexpensive, I'd really like to see Seiko delivering strong, like melting your face off value, rather than coming in closer to the middle of the pack. So, to me at least, all that is the bad is that the price is definitely up there, although it is a nice enamel dial. The blued hands do feel a little painty. I don't get why the two sub hands are black. It's a little thick. From some angles, the dial has sort of a bulbosity that can be a little trickier to read, and the strap wears backwards, and there is no loom. On the ugly front, the only thing that's ugly here, and this is sort of more me than anything, so feel free to disregard, but is the fact that this guy, Seiko, on this movement in this $1,100 watch, has a guarantee of only plus 25 to minus 15 seconds per day. What that means is that they will consider it perfectly good if your watch runs plus 25 seconds per day fast or minus 15 seconds per day fast. Seiko is saying we are totally okay with that. The thing is, no, this is over $1,000. You are not allowed to sell me a watch that is plus 25 seconds per day fast. Frankly, you are not allowed to sell me a watch that's plus 25 seconds per day fast at any price. That's just a broken watch. I totally understand that Seiko tends to overpromise and underdeliver. Underpromise and overdeliver. That's an important distinction. But anyways, this is actually running much better than that. Like I said, at the worst setting I could find, it's plus 10 seconds per day. But still, I would like to see them tighten up that guarantee for these higher end pieces. I want them to be able to say something like, we will be within plus 5 to minus 5 always on these kinds of watches. That way, if you have a problem, if you're getting a watch that doesn't run reliably, well, you can bring it back and they will fix it. Because at this price point, they can't afford to let something out the door, which sucks. So, like I said, I know this is overpromise, or underpromise, overdeliver. I know that that's Seiko's style. And in fact, most Seikos I've had are much better than their accuracy specs. But the thing is, they need to be making that promise if they want me to pay $1,000 for a watch. You can't say, it might be broken, and expect me to be okay with that. So the ugly thing here is that they are not willing to guarantee a level of accuracy that they should be at this kind of price point. So final conclusions. Look, This is a beautiful dress watch, 100%. It's a nice size. It's a nice movement. It has beautiful variants on it. It's got a nice case, an excellent strap, and an enamel dial that isn't just pretty, but actually really classy as well. I like this guy substantially, especially in that dial domain. Of course, it is a watch without lume, but it's a dress watch. I get it. It has kind of a strange strap arrangement, a relatively thick case, a somewhat busy dial, a price as high as the firing temperatures on the enamel, and the strange fact that although Seiko watches are pretty all right in accuracy, they refuse to put it in writing, which, guys, come on. But for me, the biggest question here is the price. I mean, this is absolutely not the cheapest dressy-looking watch you can find. I mean, seriously, you can get the Orient Capital here for 80 bucks. That's right, 80 bucks. Way, way cheaper. Mind you, it's quartz, it's plastic, it's, at some level, it's superficial, but at the same time, it looks pretty. You can get an Orient Bambino for 140 bucks, which is now mechanical. The Seiko Cocktail Time, I have reviewed before on the channel, and although it is definitely a watch that looks, in some ways, no less classy, it's a very different sort of watch. I can see, frankly, given the choice between the Cocktail Time and this as a dress watch, I would probably go with this, just because I find the dial to be very, very attractive. But that doesn't necessarily mean, all I'm going to say here is that there is no shortage of dressy options under the price point of this guy. Mind you, what makes this guy more unique is that enamel dial, and those are very hard to find on the lower to mid end of the luxury world. And I know what you're thinking, wait, low end is 1,100 bucks? Yeah, welcome to the insanity that is watches. But still, as a result, I can see some people very happily paying this price. And I can see why this dial and why this particular watch could command that price. So it's up there, and you can definitely get a good dress watch for way less than this. But I can see why you might pay that for this. And I can see this watch very easily appealing to many people. If you love dress watches, if you love the processes used to make them, you want a solid movement, a nice case, and a very nice little package overall, I can see that this little guy could infuse your daily watch with a touch of glass. Get it? Glass, enamel? No? You could pretty easily be enameled with this little guy. It could turn into a vitreous cycle. Can see you getting fired up for it. All right. Anyways, I digress. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.